documentary version of Meet Me in the Bathroom, acclaimed biography or not biography,
Oral history.
oral history. Thank
Yeah,
you.
from
Of
2017.
of the 2000s and into the 2010s rock scene in New York City, by Lizzie Goodman. Just fell completely flat, and it something that's co-directed by Will Lovelace and Dylan Southern. I think as a Showtime product, this it has to be one of their biggest disappointments because this is so ripe for a documentary series. You could have even followed every band that's listed in this book and done an episode on them, something similar
Hmm.
to things HBO's done with their music documentaries. Like you think about
Yep.
Sonic Highways with the Foo Fighters and whatnot. And there's so much potential here, and just I think they really misfired in the telling of this and the framing of it, and just in general, how many voices they had. Like it felt very sparse in terms of the different people who were kind of commenting on it. Just overall, I didn't find this to be compelling at all. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's important to restate the Meet Me in the Bathroom oral history book by Lizzie Goldman is a critically acclaimed music book
Yes.
from 5 years ago. There was a ton of attention when that came out, and a ton of headlines that came out of the book itself, right? Which is briefly mentioned, I guess, in this doc, which of course would be Ryan Adams being at fault for getting Albert Hammond struck out on heroin, basically, and the rest of the Strokes being fucking pissed about it.
Mhm.
That was like a big headline, big I guess controversy because Adams denied it when the book came out. But
Ryan Adams, pretty much a confirmed piece of shit, by the way.
right,
So
and I was actually curious how much Ryan Adams we would get in this doc because since the book has been written, the myriad misconduct allegations have come to light
mhm.
against Ryan Adams. But yeah, I think the issue with this doc I think a key fault in the form of documentary filmmaking, which is if you don't have any access, then there's no point. This is so much more surface level than the book. And
Mhm.
if the Strokes aren't going to participate in your documentary when they are the key figure of the whole doc, what are you giving us? Because all the footage we do see, all that archival footage, none of that's new. Strokes
Mhm.
fans have seen that shit before. So nothing's being illuminated on, nor is it, I think, going far enough to visually represent how far the book did go and was so beloved for going, you know? So it's just kind of like a nothing burger to me. And man, it is just disappointing because like the book reception went, it is a really potent topic to explore the 2000s rock scene in New York and what that represented. I think of writers and podcasters that we both listen to, like people like Chris Ryan at The Ringer, were there at the time and have spoken about experiencing that in the moment. It's it is, I think, a really iconic time in modern music history,
Mhm.
and centered around the Strokes and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and LCD Sound System and Interpol primarily, and yet this doc just feels kind of aimless in how it goes through things, and we quickly brush past how 9/11 affected things. We quickly brush past all these bands rising to fame. We quickly brush past Karen O perhaps giving us the most interesting thing in the doc, which would be how she felt different and perhaps ostracized for being a woman in the
Mhm.
scene at the time. She's not giving any time to that, but that was actually, I think, one of the most compelling aspects that they could have went into further. We
Completely.
also quickly brushed past the fact that this scene, perhaps in some way, may have contributed to the gentrification of Brooklyn in New York City. They don't commit to anything, unfortunately, with this documentary.
I might have missed it. Did they explain why it's called "Meet Me in the Bathroom"?
I think that's just a reference. Oh, it's a name of a Stroke song, right? And
I'm not aware of that,
I
but
think it
maybe.
is. And I think in general, it's just a reference to come do coke with me.
Well, yeah, they actually have a story in the book about this person in this scene who was kind of known for basically being come to the bathroom and do this with me, and it's actually a really funny story at the beginning of the book that I feel like would set the scene so much more. And I haven't finished reading this. It's kind of a
Hmm.
pick up a few pages here and there when I get to him. About two-thirds of the way done. But one of the things I really love about the Lizzie Goldman book is just how it really like puts you in a place and you feel like you're in these clubs, like experiencing what these like shows were like, what the
Right.
scene actually felt like to be a part of.
No
And
smartphones.
yeah, exactly. It's just like people like hanging out, writing music, people being inspired by each other, the competitiveness between them all, which I think was also like buoyed by this camaraderie between them. And you just don't get any of this feel
Right.
in this. And you mentioned how there's not a lot of new footage, and even the stuff like some of the interesting stuff we do get from James Murphy of LCD Sound System, which I was like, of course James wanted to fucking participate in this. Like he's pretty like self-centered, neurotic
Hmm.
type of guy. It's not really like all that well like constructed. Like all of a sudden
No.
he's like, yeah, I was producing DFA and then Rapture didn't really want to keep going. And so I was like, oh, my life's falling apart. I might as well put a song out. And then I'm in Europe touring on this song. I'm like, what?
Huh.
Like,
I had to get a band.
yeah, it's like what all of a sudden? I mean, like I as someone that just loves LCD, I ate a lot of that stuff up. But when like the movie ended, I was like, what the fuck was going on there? And for a lot of the book, they talk about the Strokes' first tour over in the UK, and they touch on this when Interpol goes and tours, right? How everybody's just like, "Do
Yeah.
you know the Strokes?" But like
Right.
the stories from the Strokes tour over there is like one of my favorite parts of the early book, like all of their like shenanigans, and you just like to not have that in there. It's like, what are
Yeah.
we fucking
Like
doing?
young Julian Casablancas is clearly like one of the most compelling figures from this
Yes.
whole period, right? And he's like, it's like, oh, he doesn't like being famous. It's like, okay, can you give us a little bit more than that? You know, like
Yeah,
Jesus
and
Christ.
you know,
And to
it,
confirm, it is a Stroke song on "Room on Fire."
okay,
Meet me in the
gotcha.
bathroom.
Um, but it's just a totally like for what this could have been, just a total disappointment. And it's the sort of thing where, like you said, if you can't get this access, this is the sort of thing you could come back to in 10 years when these people hopefully are more willing to talk about this and like
Right.
reminisce about this, and it would have hit just as much then. But
Right. And
they
and
rushed it.
that's the weird thing to me too. It's like another thing they rushed is like file sharing. You know, Napster, LimeWire. I
Yeah.
would love to hear more about that. But
Mhm.
like Julian Casablancas, to his credit, I guess, is like a true like rock star guy. He does not want to sell out. So it's not surprising that he doesn't want to participate in this doc. However, Lizzie Goldman was managed to write the book. What if you just made like a super like down the middle doc with a bunch of talking heads? Because Lizzie Goldman talked to a bunch of people to write the book,
Mhm.
did she not? Maybe
A
you could
lot of
talk to them
people.
too for the documentary. I don't know. But like there's just not enough of a point of view. Like,
Yeah.
and it just kind of rips through a bunch of stuff, but it just feels like Cliff Notes, you know. So quite
Yeah.
disappointing.
You mentioned the stuff with 9/11 and like talking about how the city became, cheaper because, people were moving out of it after the attack. And it just felt like kind of short sighted to the time. I mean, like 9/11 completely changed, the city and the way people felt about New York. And I think that's what made this scene so special was it like made people feel like there was something exciting again about the
Yeah,
city, something
community.
like yeah, something that only you could experience here. And they just don't even like capture that well. And it's like if you can't even like nail the 9/11 parts, like I really don't know like who greenlit lit this.